in some communities, that issue is the number one issue, 100%. And like, I mean, up till this morning, right? Like people texting my phone and talking about a plan, some of the things we're working on. But I go outside the Detroit area, it's not in the top 40.
But Senator, it's not just a political issue, it's also a moral issue is what I'm trying to get to. So let's talk about those, calling them balls and strikes, if you will. So first of all, do you accept that Israel has a policy of enforced famine and starvation in the Gaza Strip?
Krystal Ball and Sagar on Breaking Points had Democratic Senator Elissa Slotkin on their show. Krystal and Sagar engaged in a very heated debate with the senator about Israel and Gaza. I wanted to share this on the channel and share my thoughts on this as well. So we're going to take a look at Krystal Ball, Sagar and Jetty, Elissa Slotkin on Breaking Point.
So I hear you on the idea of like you want to talk about the economics and the unifying and cost of living. And I think that ignores a big elephant in the room, especially when you're talking about even Zoran Mamdani. The reason Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer don't want to endorse him is because of his position on Israel. The single most viral clip that he had in that election actually wasn't about cost of living, even though that's what he wanted to make his campaign about. His opponents, Andrew Cuomo in particular, wanted to make it all about accusing him of anti-Semitism and attacking him for his views on Israel and Palestine. So the most viral moment from that entire campaign, I believe, was this moment on the debate stage. Guys, this is E1. Let me go ahead and play this for you, and then I want to get your reaction.
Mr. Mamdani.
I would stay in New York City. My plans are to address New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and focus on that.
Mr. Mamdani, can I just jump in? Would you visit Israel as mayor?
I will be doing, as the mayor, I'll be standing up for Jewish New Yorkers, and I'll be meeting them wherever they are across the 5 boroughs, whether that's in their synagogues and temples or at their homes or at the subway platform, because ultimately we need to focus on delivering on their concerns.
And just yes or no, do you believe in a Jewish state of Israel?
I believe Israel has the right to exist.
Not
as a Jewish state?
As a state with equal rights.
Now, this was considered very controversial when he said it, and I think the results are in at this point that he didn't win in spite of his position there. He won in part because of it, including if you listen to Andrew Cuomo's numbers, he won a majority of Jewish voters inside of New York City. And so what I'm curious for your view on is while, I would love to debate you on your healthcare policy. I think we need Medicare for all. You think public option, your housing policy, et cetera. I'm just being really real with you. I don't really hear what you say if you are still supporting a genocide in Gaza. And that's for me, I'm speaking for myself, but I know there are millions of other people who feel the same, that you have to at least cross this sort of moral threshold. And what it indicates to people, and I think part of why, Zoran won so many people in New York City, young people in particular, but Jewish New Yorkers, people across the board, is because it was a sign of, number one, okay, you're focused on New York City first and foremost.
Sure.
Number two, you're willing to take the heat on an issue that is really difficult for you, where you're being overtly smeared as an anti-Semite. And number three, there's no, entrenched interest that's going to control. You have a spine, you have principles, you're willing to stand up for something. And so, I'm curious for your reflections on that because of your voting record and where you've stood on this conflict.
Yeah, well, one of the proudest moments that I had in my last election, where I just won on the same ballot as Donald Trump, was that I won a majority of Jewish voters in Michigan. We have a large Jewish population. And I won Dearborn Heights, and Hamtramck, the 3 Muslim-dominated cities. Trump won 2 out of the 3. So I think the thing that I would push back on is the voters vote with their feet, right? We have a moment in an election where they get to decide. And there was no issue that was more difficult for me in this last, I would say 6 years, but certainly in this last election, other than this issue, because it's personal. I'm a Middle East analyst by training. And so what I tried to do and why I think I managed to win both those communities is call balls and strikes literally up to this week on what's going on.
So let's talk a little bit more about that.
But I think it's important, right? If you're going to push on me, then I think there's one of us that's had an election and had to appeal to my voters and win. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that Mr. Mamdani won. Or actually, I didn't know his name. I didn't know much about him until he won. But because I think this issue is motivating people in a very visceral and personal way.
Yeah.
But it's not the only issue that my voters in Michigan care about.
Of course.
And the online world is extremely, extremely focused on this, but that doesn't always represent the majority. And I think if I can push back, like if we're out on the road every day in Michigan when I'm there. In some communities, that issue is the number one issue, 100%. And like, I mean, up till this morning, right? Like people texting my phone and talking about a plan, some of the things we're working on. But I go outside the Detroit area, it's not in the top 40.
But Senator, it's not just a political issue, it's also a moral issue is what I'm trying to get to. So let's talk about those.
Before they get into this next part, I just wanted to say with Mamdani and with what Krystal Ball is saying here, it apparently resonated with a lot of Democratic voters in the city of New York in terms of the primary. But to me, it was incredibly refreshing. They tried to do a gotcha on him to make it seem like he was completely anti-Israel or anti-Semitic or whatever, term they want to try to use, when he simply just said, my job, if I'm elected, is to be the mayor of New York. So I am going to be focused on being the mayor of New York. These are my words now, but what does supporting Israel or not supporting Israel really have to do with being a mayor in the largest city in the United States of America that is not in Israel? It's just insane to me that anybody would view that as controversial when, to me, Mamdani gave the perfect answer.
Is, calling them balls and strikes, if you will. So first of all, do you accept that Israel has a policy of enforced famine and starvation in the Gaza Strip?
I think I literally put my name on a letter yesterday or last night that says like a policy of starvation, people are starting to starve. And in general, I mean, I served in places like Ramadi and Fallujah. I watched in 2004 and 2005, Al-Qaeda terrorists drag American citizens behind a vehicle until they died, right? Like horrible, and then string them up like a lynching.
Okay.
We still had a responsibility to get aid into Fallujah, despite the fact that we were fighting Al-Qaeda cells in Fallujah. And I have been clear about that.
So this is a crime against humanity. Forced starvation is a crime against humanity.
The occupying power has a responsibility to get aid into the war zone, period.
So
by the law of war.
So in addition, do you accept that the Israeli plan, as reported by Haaretz, as discussed openly by ministers like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, as backed by the President of the United States, is forced ethnic cleansing?
I think we have, as recently as yesterday, the Prime Minister of Israel talking about forced migration into certain areas and then potentially out of the country. That is not legal. That is not on any international standard since World War II. And I've been clear about that. So I would ask for a little bit of an open mind.
Well, what I would ask is, listen, I'm a YouTuber. I have my words, that's all I have. But you're a United States Senator. Like you're not the president, but you have power. So what are you going to do? Because so far what we've seen, I mean, you voted for some of the aid that's been used to massacre children and innocents. You have backed Israel, as far as I can tell, from your voting record at almost every turn. You voted for a definition of anti-Semitism that would, codify anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism. You voted as a member of the House to sanction the ICC for indicting Benjamin Netanyahu, who you just admitted is a war criminal, by your own words. So are you going to join Senator Angus King, Senator Bernie Sanders in saying no more aid to this country that is committing war crimes against innocent civilians?
I think the first thing, if you're asking about what to do with power, and I would offer that right now Democrats own nothing in Washington. So
don't play powerless with me. You're a United States Senator. There are things you can do.
In terms of who runs our foreign policy, I just think it's interesting, right, that there was a ton of protests when Democrats were in charge.
There was a protest in Manhattan yesterday.
Okay. I think it's fair to say, just to be honest, that back and forth, like the number of protests that go on now versus before.
Well, they were part of your political coalition.
Well, not to
right?
mention, Senator Slotkin,
that's fair.
Obviously, I'm here. I was very upset over the Biden administration policy. And as you can tell, I'm very upset over the Trump administration policy. So let's deal not in strawman, but me in the here and now.
Terms of the tools that I have, the tools that we have in general, to me, the most important thing is a pressurized campaign to get aid into people who are starving. That to me is the number one, because that's the one is urgent and today. And that.
But will you cut off aid to Israel so long as they're committing crimes against humanity?
There is a difference between a weapon to protect a country from incoming missiles versus other type. Offensive and defensive weapons are different.
So would you support offensive weapons ban? Like, would you stop any offensive aid to Israel?
That certainly, to me, would be a place to look, but I'm not going to cut off a blanket next sale on a defensive weapon that comes through. No.
I also reject that because, for example, if Senator Slotkin, if you were asked to support defensive weapons for Iran, defensive weapons for Russia, you wouldn't back that.
No, but Iran, but
they're defensive. They're just protecting civilians, right? So how is it different?
But because Israel's being shot at.
So is Russia.
So is Iran.
Yeah.
So is Russia.
Ukraine's shooting at Russia right now.
I'm sorry. This is the difference between allies, partners, and adversaries.
Why is it an ally then? What are they doing right now, which makes it an ally?
I think allied relationships, just like Lithuania right now, like an allied relationship or a partner relationship is a long-standing relationship of information sharing and diplomacy. And that is, to me, it's not a like every day we decide Lithuania is our ally or not. We're allied or not. And sometimes we have big breaks with allies, right? Sometimes we have difficult moments with allies. Sometimes it goes the wrong way with allies. But an allied relationship is a long-term relationship.
It's hard for me to understand why we should ally. Like, I'm sure you believe in or claim to believe in liberal human rights. Why would we ally with a nation that is committing a genocide and live streaming it?
Can I ask literally, like this, I think about this from the mirror image way, because I do not support the things that Donald Trump is doing, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm an American. So do I want other countries to look at America and be like, we can't stand Donald Trump, so we're going to end any longstanding relationship we have with the American people. We're going to cut off any support we give them on information sharing or intelligence sharing. Like, we are not just our elected leaders. And I think that's the thing that's been lost in the conversation.
So B'Tselem and another Israeli human rights organization joined the global consensus, Amnesty International, some 800 scholars. There was a piece from an Israeli scholar in the New York Times in saying this is a genocide. Do you accept, even Marjorie Taylor Greene yesterday came out and said it's a genocide. Do you accept that? And if you do, what responsibility does a United States senator have? This is a nation that, we send every year billions of dollars to aid that you have, voted for and supported. Like, what responsibility does a United States senator have to prevent genocide and to stop genocide that we see ongoing?
We have a responsibility up till today to ensure that food is getting in.
Is it a genocide?
People don't starve. I don't know that I'd use that term.
Why?
But it is violating the law of war.
Why don't you use the term though?
Because I think, it's, to me, do I think it's ethnic cleansing, which is what I think of in genocide? I don't know if it meets that definition.
They're announcing
but didn't you say it earlier that it was ethnic cleansing? You said that they wanted to force it. This is open from the Israeli government. Like, they're saying it. Their Minister of National Security, they come out and they're like, we don't need shells. We need shells, not food. And we need to encourage migration. They're saying
you're not going to get me to support what the Israeli government is saying right now. Right. I think the point I was trying to make is it's not just about, we have relationships with nations over time, regardless of who their leaders are. We have really tough moments. We have easier moments. But that doesn't, so I'm not willing to say that, I hate everything ever.
Sure,
into
but
the future.
even if you accept that they're committing a genocide, you still wouldn't cut off their aid?
I think that defensive aid and offensive aid are different things, and I think at this point,
so
what
if
they're
Nazi
doing
Germany,
every single day,
if Nazi Germany said we want defensive aid, it's just you have to see where they're all weapons that are being shipped. In another context,
the weapons that they're using right now, to be honest, if you look at what's happening on the ground, the military part of this conflict is, for the most part, over. What they are doing every single day is around aid, and they are hurting people around the delivery of aid.
People. who were starving people just trying to get aid.
That is not
you know this.
That's not high intensity bombs. That's not the weapons that that we were talking about 2 years ago. It's just not. I'm sorry. Every single day, the military reports that I read, they are traditional, this is a military that has a bad strategy. It is not the bombs that we were seeing 2 years ago.
It's not a military that has a bad strategy. The strategy is forced starvation and ethnic cleansing. That's their strategy, and they're accomplishing it very effectively with the full backing of the United States government, including, sadly, Democrats.
So Elissa Slotkin, she's obviously intelligent, but she's doing the typical Weasley politician thing where she's trying to thread the needle, and she's doing everything that she can to support Israel, obviously, here. And Saagar and Krystal Ball both here say, why are we supporting this ally? Well, because they're our ally and we've always supported them and we'll always support them, blah, blah, blah. And, I think Krystal Ball makes a really good point that Senator Slotkin tries to act like is ridiculous is, would you continue giving funds to Nazi Germany? And, this idea that, well, if it's our ally, we've always supported them, we'll continue to support them. What if, and this is highly unlikely, I don't see this ever happening, but what if the Nazis took over Germany again and it became a continuation of the Third Reich, or it would be the Fourth Reich or whatever? Would our government just say, well, we always supported Germany and they're doing some bad things now, but they're our allies, so we have to support them? She sounds no different than Ted Cruz did a few weeks ago when Tucker Carlson was grilling him, and he just kept saying, well, they're our ally. And they also bring up the point here of why are they our ally? And, what we're always told, and Ted Cruz did this, well, we get all this intel, blah, blah, blah. And what we get from Israel is worth many times what we give to Israel. Really? I mean, does anybody really believe that? Voters in America aren't believing that. And we have a scenario now where you have this huge disconnect between the establishment Democrats like this Elissa Slotkin and Democratic voters where the polling is showing single-digit support for Israel. There was a poll the other day that was like 8% of Democrats. We're just talking Democrat citizens in the United States, Democratic voters support Israel. But yet you have all of these Democratic politicians like Elissa Slotkin who continue to support them. It's a major disconnect, and the New York Times just had an article the other day saying that the established Democrats are upset and worried because they're afraid that come 2028, they won't have a candidate for president who supports Israel. And think about that. And I think that's reflective of not just Democrats, but most Americans, where Slotkin here says, well, it's not in the top 100 or top 50 or whatever issues for people. And she's right, but not in the way that she thinks. It's that people are saying, I want to be able to retire. I want to be able to own a home someday. I don't want to go bankrupt if I get sick. I want to be able to send my kids to college, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm being told, oh, well, we don't have money for this and that and the other thing that could help Americans, but we're going to continue to fund this war machine and we're going to continue to give money to Israel. And people are saying, no, we don't want that anymore. We're not going to support what Israel is doing. And while you're giving all this money to Israel, you're saying you don't have any money for me, an American citizen. I'm sure that Elissa Slotkin was very shocked with the reception that she got from Krystal Ball and from Saagar and Jetty on Breaking Points, because I'm sure she thought this would be a CNN, MSNBC type thing, at least from Krystal, because she's on the left. But Krystal Ball handled this the way that it should be handled. It shouldn't matter if there's a D or an R next to their name. If this is their policy on Israel and they come on a show dealing with somebody who's a progressive, and we're seeing not even progressives, we're seeing some of these other more centrist-y kind of Democrat podcasts and YouTube channels who are also saying, we can't support this anymore. We have to cut off funding to Israel, cut it off entirely. So the Democratic Party and these establishment corporate type Democrats like Elissa Slotkin, they're dinosaurs at this point, I hope anyway. I don't see how they're going to survive in the Democratic Party going forward, because it seems that voters are very much drawing a line in the sand and the base of the Democratic Party. Let me know what you think about all this. How do you feel about how Krystal Ball handled this debate conversation with Senator Elissa Slotkin? Who do you think came out on top? Was it Krystal Ball? Was it Elissa Slotkin? Make sure to let me know in the comments. Make sure to give me a like and subscribe. I'm Chris on Culture, and I will see you in the next video.